2 devs, same stack, same years of experience. One is getting 3 on-sites of the week. The other is getting completely ghosted. The difference isn't talent. It comes down to their process, if I'm being honest with you. Today, we're going to audit job hunt pipelines like production. We're going to see how you're inputting things, what your bottlenecks are, and the one metric that we're seeing that's predicting people getting interviews as software developers. What's going on, everyone? We are back with another one. You know what's funny? We have people quoting that at this point, right? And I love it.
I think this is a big deal. We consistently see members from our communities that are running, but they wind up staying in the same place, that are showing up, listening to our content, participating, like putting in effort, but not getting the results that they want. And I think this will be a good chance for us to hopefully shake some feathers and make sure the time that you're putting into all the things you're trying to accomplish bears fruit. And so I think this is one definitely in terms of a value standpoint that hopefully could be the big difference maker for you on your job search.
Yeah, most candidates, they have a lot of activity. I did a meetup the other day, and it's very obvious to me. People are active, but when I look at some of the stuff, it's made me realize it's not a showing you what to do, because there were people at this meetup that were like, Danny, I love the podcast. I'm in 100 Devs. I'm in all these programs. And we're showing them what to do, but they're not translating into their own things. They're just trying to replicate it one for one, but they're not making it connect. And that's when I realized this is less of a tell you what to do. It's a more of, I need to shift your mindset along with that telling so you do the right things in the right way. This is going to be one of those episodes. If you're not familiar with my term, I say Gem City. Anytime there's an episode that's worth taking notes on, this is that episode. We're going to be covering this in 4 acts. So I love doing the act thing so that way it's structured. Act number 1 is going to be regarding your inputs and your control. What are you doing in this regard? So inputs, the way that I look at it, it's like levers, right? Like if they're vague, like if you have a lever in a factory that has a very vague label on it, people aren't necessarily going to know, what is this actually conditioning? What is it touching? So your results could be kind of random on if somebody's pulling it at the right time. We need this to be a very laser focused approach and lever that we're pulling here. So some of the things that I'm looking at when it comes towards this pipeline is, number 1, what is even the ideal company? Like, have you been doing research, or is it more along the lines of, I see that they're posting on LinkedIn or Indeed, right? You should be doing somewhat of a targeted approach in a certain degree, especially if you're trying to get like your first job in tech. I'd be really targeting organizations that are more local to me than anything. And I would be going to some of their things, like their domain pages, their social media pages. But if I see that they're posting something, one of the first things I'd probably be doing is checking out all the people that are working there. Do I know anybody? Have I met anybody? Can I reach out to somebody, set up a coffee chat? Prime example, literally yesterday at 3 p.m. I was on a call with somebody. He's been through 100 Devs. He has a master's degree, hasn't been able to turn that into anything, right? Which, wild. But as soon as we jumped on the call, I was like, oh, this is exactly why. And he was able to set up a coffee chat with the engineering manager at CVS, which in his area is a very big employer for software development. Golden, right? Like this is the stuff that you want to kind of see. And as we talk about, like, what are you going to talk about in the coffee chat? He's like, I don't know. It's like, this is your input control right now. Like you're controlling what you want this coffee chat to be. You can't walk in like you don't know where you're going to navigate this conversation to, especially when you know it's like somebody that could be not even a referral, but the highest referral you could have, because they're probably going to be deciding a role at that level, right? So if you've got the luxury to have somebody on a coffee chat at that level, why aren't you really thinking it through? And he said, yeah, I know I'm going to go to the social pages and stuff. I was like, man, you need to really go through this at a higher level. If you've got 15 minutes, you need to be thinking about this in a completely different light than if this is a coffee chat with somebody at a meetup that was, you know, a junior dev at the same level as you. There's a completely different approach. So 80% of the prep needs to actually be meaningful, but you need to be so prepared that it actually looks like you haven't prepared at all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think this is why I'm really excited to do this episode, because we have these calls all the time. Sometimes I walk away kind of, what's the secret here? Why does some people keep the momentum going and why does some falter out? And I think the first thing you mentioned, it's the inputs. It's the amount of shots on goal that you are making so that you can eventually land an opportunity. But it's also the quality, because a lot of folks think going on the job search is like opening up Indeed, looking at the 5 companies, clicking application, and like that's it. No, you should have a list of companies regardless of whether they have active opportunities or not. You're trying to build a foundational network, ideally local first. You're trying to see companies that have probably hired within the past 3 to 4 months, so that if they have hired, they're probably more likely to keep hiring. You're looking for companies that are active online, that are sharing things, because that might mean that they are more open for you to be able to reach out and find folks. And if you're just like waking up, going into your job search process, seeing what hiring cafe is listed that day, it's too shallow of a process. You need to be building your list independent of what these job search sites have delivered for you on a day-to-day basis. And if you can get to the point where you have this funnel structure, where you're putting companies, people, opportunities into it, and each day you're adding to that funnel, you can optimize everything else. But that inputs and the quality of the inputs is one of the most important things you can do throughout your process. And I just see folks that will click or will apply, but there's no thought or intentionality behind it. So if there's one thing that we could ask you to do in the beginning, is really just think about what are the types of opportunities you're going after? What are the companies that have those opportunities? Building a list, finding folks that work at those companies that are on your list, beginning that networking process. And when you get the coffee chat, when you get that email or Twitter DM response, how do you squeeze all the juice out of it as possible? And one other thing too, while we're here too, because I think one of the other things that I see is people get really burnt out on the job search process. And that's another barrier that I see a lot as to why folks have gone through our programs and not come out the other side, is because the goal for all of them is the job. But if you hyper focus on the goal being the job, and that job doesn't come after a week, a month, 2 months, there's no brain in the world that's going to be like, yeah, we should keep doing this every day. We should keep doing these things. You're eventually going to burn out. And so one of the easiest ways to control burnout is to focus on the things that are in your control and not the things that are out. So getting the job is out of your control, but building the list that we just talked about, entering more inputs into your system, that's in your control every day. And if you focus on the things that you can control, the numbers that you can push, you can stay in the game alone.
100%. And, as we were talking, I realized like one thing, especially if you're in the job search, regardless of level. I think this isn't a junior situation more than it is senior or above. One big tip I'm going to give you, and no matter how hard they push, do not sign any exclusive recruiter agreements. Oh, no. It popped in my head from a conversation earlier in the week, and you said something that reminded me of it. Please do not do that. I know, by the way, we have a lot of recruiters and career coaches that listen to this to take our advice. I'm all for it. Just don't put it behind a paywall. You may not love that I'm saying this, but the reality is I often try to leverage multiple recruiters to try and find me the best offer possible. And then whoever gets it, fantastic, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. To be honest, you shouldn't even stop interviewing until you have a signed agreement. And then even then, I would still be having conversations until I get company property. So I don't ever stop at that regard, right? So one thing that I've often said is proof beats promises. And I would rather have someone bring me something as proof, meaning a role, something solid, before I'm all in on them. The same way that they would want me to prove my abilities in one way, shape, or form through some interview or some process, jumping through hoops, right? So I would rather ship one role-shaped project that would allow me to talk meaningfully about my skills than to just jump in a bunch of random little pools for things. And it brings me back to like someone complaining about take home projects. I'd rather do a take home project than anything else, but I don't want my take home project to be 40 hours of effort. Like there needs to be some level of realism right there, right? Those just kind of came to my mind. This might be a little out of it, but
No,
it
but it's
goes
so
back
important.
to the inputs and controls. Like these are things that you can control for where your input value is going.
And it could often come at the worst point for a lot of our listeners, right? You're struggling, you're not making progress in your job search, and here's this recruiter that's showing you interest, is promising leads, is promising opportunities. You just got to sign exclusivity, and so you do it because you're grasping for something, and then that could be the thing that holds your process up for another 3 to 6 months. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, and so with this, we're going back into the inputs and controls and other inputs. One is what cold DMs and cold messages really are. And for me, and we've talked about this before, but I think I want to really break it down. When it comes to outreach or like an effective message or things like that, do you know, in my opinion, like one of the best ways to ensure your message isn't cold is by being seen for something or somewhere, because then you have a warm message, if anything else, than a cold outreach, right? So if you're seeing them at meetups or events, or you've networked in one way, shape, or form, or you've commented on their posts in the past and you've added to the discussion, that is a really effective warm lead to then follow up and be like, hey, we've been talking on comments and I really love this, or I saw you at this meetup and we kind of geeked out a little bit, love to continue the conversation here. Really effective at that point. But there's some messages that you could send out that would be like a little bit more effective than probably the average DM that you'd be sending somebody. What are your thoughts, Leon?
Can you give me 15 minutes of your time, and I don't know you, you don't know me, and I really want to talk to you? Can you talk to me, please? Please talk to me.
Very
You're not getting responses to that message. When that's the most common message people send is, give me, stranger that you know nothing about, the most precious thing that you can't buy back in this world, your time. And so yeah, I think that's kind of the rough thing that folks fall into, is that that there's a goal to it, right? Like you're trying to meet the person so you can build the relationship, so you can get their referral. Like we're not shy to this process of like what we're doing, but there is a right and wrong way to go about it. And so the DM is something that we could talk about. The one point that you mentioned is, I don't want it to slide, because it's been one of the things that you've mentioned in the past that I've had folks in my programs do that has led to a lot better opportunities. And that's the one to many. So you've built out your list that we just talked about, right? You have a list of the companies, you have a list of the people, and you're engaging with them online, but you're responding, adding to the conversation when they post something, say on LinkedIn. They're talking about MongoDB, and you talk about how MongoDB did XYZ for you, or you notice that they've raised that round. Like you're adding meaningfully to that conversation. They see it. Everyone else in their circle that views it sees it. So it's not even just a one-to-one, it's a one-to-many, where everyone gets a chance to see you having some sort of input into the conversation, right? And then that played out for a week or so, or for longer, means that there's something in the back of their brain where you've spaced repetition them to know and recognize. Even if they don't recognize your face, or even if they don't recognize the name, it's not an immediate dismissal if this person's a complete stranger. They almost feel like you're an acquaintance, and they're more likely to respond. Has had wonderful returns on people's investments to do that, to like warm your lead. I mean, we know this in sales, right? But to like warm your lead by contributing. And people that are putting out content want your input. They're not putting out content to like, because that's what makes them feel good. It's the likes, it's the comments, it's the seeing people engage with them that makes them feel good. So huge win. And then going back to the DM, the messages that you're sending, first thing, we're talking about auditing a response. What would you respond to? Forget me and Danny. What type of message would you respond to? Because if you're not sending those kind of messages, at least you have to pause and think about what you're doing. Because a lot of people, I'll be like, hey, would you respond to the email you just sent? Would you respond to the DM you just sent? And they're like, absolutely not. That's spam. And I'm like, all right, what are you doing then? And so that's the first place I like people to start. Is like, you can be the arbiter of your own success. You can absolutely be analytical and not critical of the things you're putting out into the world. And so start with that layer.
Yeah, I can't begin to tell you the number of messages that I've gotten that are pretty much identical, right? Where I could read the first couple words and I already know where the rest of this message is going at that point. Matter of fact, I'll bring this up real fast. I did a meetup the other day where it was how to get a job in tech in today's market. And I've done something in that meetup that I've never done before because I realized it's less of a show and more of a change in mindset. So I'm going to do this with you right now on this podcast. Take out your phone right now, right? If you're listening on your phone, cool. Open up some kind of email or something that you can type in to take a note. So it's a notes app, whatever it may be. In this, everybody, imagine and assume right now that I am a recruiter and I am basically interviewing you for a role. And I'm going to ask you a question. Now, this question isn't in every single interview, but the core essence of this question is, and that is, why should I hire you? I am going to give you like 20 seconds, so I'm going to just keep explaining things as I do that, but I want you to really think through, why should I hire you? What are the things that I should hire you for? When I did this at the meetup, I had everybody do this, gave them about 20, 30 seconds, and then I told everyone in the room, as soon as you're done, raise your phones in the air, right? And it was for a couple of reasons. Number one, so that way I knew everybody was done. And number two, to make sure they can't change their answer as soon as we start going through this. And as I go through the room, I'm bringing the mic to everybody and I'm putting the mic in their face. And by this point, you should be done, if you're listening right now, writing your answer. Because if you're in an interview, how long are you going to really take before you think about what you're going to say to this kind of level of question anyway? And as I start going up to people, they say, well, I'm a hard worker and I'm really great at this and I know this. It's cool. All right, next person. Oh, I'm really great at doing this and I'm really great at doing that and I'm detail oriented, etc. Went to the next person. I was like, oh, I'm really passionate and really know that I love tech. And went to the next person. I was like, oh, I'm really great at doing tasks on the fly, and I'm really this and that. It's like, And I finally pulled back and I said, after going through like about 10 of them, right? I asked everybody in the room. I was like, what do y'all feel about the answers? And someone was like, oh, they all sound kind of the same. I was like, exactly. They all sound exactly the same. And so if you're in a room right now with 100 people, and 100 people are saying the exact same thing that you're saying to the same question without prompting, without like saying, hey, I want your answers to be in this room. It's like, no, what is the answer to why we should hire you? And they're all saying the same thing. And if you look at your phone right now, do you feel like your answer was the same at this point? Just be real. I can't make fun of you because I'm not there, right? But I would say at that point, you need to ask yourself, if you're saying the exact same thing everyone else is saying, how are you even standing out? Like, what are you showing at that point? And why hasn't the thought come in of, I don't actually know if you should hire me, because I don't know at this point, because I don't know anything about the role. I just know that you are hiring for a role. I don't know if I can solve those problems because I don't know what the problems are. Why haven't you thought about any of those other anomalies? Like, why aren't we thinking about, oh, well, you haven't told me a problem that I can solve, so I don't know if I'm effective at it or not. But once I do know the problems, I can tell you whether I am. Or even making up a scenario of, oh, well, based on the job description, I saw that you had XYZ issue. Well, I know I'm very effective at XYZ because I've done ABC in the past. And so that way I know this skill set can relate from that experience to help solving that problem effectively. That's a whole different realm of that. And so that's what you need to start thinking about. Even when it comes to these DMs, I was like brainstorming for a couple seconds. What would be some effective DMs? And so one that I was thinking about is, if you go to a meetup and someone is speaking or something, one thing that you could be like, hey, I loved your talk on use effects in React.js. I actually stole one of the tactics that you put in there, and you can see it right here. Here's like an open source PR that I made on GitHub, and you can see that I used the tactic that you suggested, and oh my God, it's so much better. I felt so much more comfortable kind of putting this through. Just out of curiosity, would you have like 10 minutes so I can kind of geek out with you on how I did this? Because I really loved how you implemented this and it taught me a lot. What speaker wouldn't love to see something like that, especially if they're not getting a ton of DMs? Remember, when that person's getting more messages, it becomes harder to kind of factor that out. So it's always great to find people that have maybe not a big social media following, but so they're not getting flooded with things, and they have way more flexible schedules because of that. And it's the same thing too. The higher up you go in a company's hierarchy, then it becomes harder to get time with those individuals, right? So staying somewhere in the mid-range to lower range is much easier to get time with those people. Another thing that I was thinking about is, like, let's say you are one of the listeners that went through like a college and you have a degree, I would even be finding people from that degree program or that college and I'm like, hey, fellow dolphin here or whatever the hell the damn mascot is or whatever else, right? But hey, I was kind of going through some profiles and I found that we went to the same school and I saw that you're also in the area. Have you been going to XYZ meetups? Like, have you been part of any of these communities? That's a really great way to start that.
That one prints all the time. The school, any shared connection. And it could be a lot of different stuff too. School, community groups, like anything you can latch onto. Meetup groups even on like LinkedIn, the groups people put in their profiles. Those are all really good things to say like, hey, we're in the same group together. We're in the same in-group, like help me out. Or let's communicate always wins. Yeah, it's such a good strategy.
Yeah, and then I always say one of the easiest ways to get people to talk to you is making it easy to reply. So it almost takes the effort and weight off of the conversation. And so one additional thing that I would be doing is if I'm reaching out to anybody, let's use the speaker one example again. Let's say maybe, you know what? Let's say that maybe their DMs are off and you could comment something along the lines of, hey, I really loved your video, your talk, whatever, on use effects. And I implemented it, but I had a scenario that basically is making me think of 2 specific questions. Can I send those 2 questions to you real fast so that way I can get some insight on how I can approach this better? That's such an easy way to enter that conversation and have them actually reply. And don't make those questions of, hey, I want to get a job at your company. Yeah. Make it related to the thing. Otherwise, it's a bait and switch that nobody wants to be a part of. But I guarantee you that pattern of conversation alone, matter of fact, I have proof of this now that I think about it. Everyone's favorite, a good buddy of mine, Theo, or T3, if you don't know him by another name. We were at, my mind says it was Render ATL. And he was giving a talk on something, I can't remember what it was, but it was React related. And someone in the audience asked such a good question that he literally said on stage, that is the best question that I've ever been asked. As soon as he got off stage, he went through everybody, went right directly to that person, and she was basically geeking out with him over that technology. And she was so knowledgeable and so well thought out that he said, you know what? He went on the side and literally DM'd one of his old coworkers, I believe at Twitch, and was like, you need to talk to her. So she was so good that it wasn't even about, oh, like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're vague, or you just need help. It's like, he felt compelled to make the referral. She didn't even have to ask for it. He felt compelled to do so because he knew how great she was at what it is. So it's like, if you're doing that in a conversation, it's over.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap. And so audit your messages, right? Ask yourself, is this something I would respond to? Is this making it as easy as possible for someone to respond to? Is this providing them some value so that they feel like they should respond? Whether that's being on the same in-group, whether that's having met them at a meetup, whether that's having been warming your prospect on LinkedIn by commenting with value, right? You got to think about each of these pieces. And so that's another thing where people start putting in all this effort, but they're just sending the same message every single time. And they're sending the same message, like Danny said, that everyone else is sending. The channels get muddy. And so you have to realize that it's not about your effort, right? It's not about just showing up. It's about how can I day to day, week to week, start making these tweaks so that when I do put the time and energy in, I get what I want out. And so hopefully you can think about, all right, how do I build a better list? How do I better communicate with the folks that are on the list? And that hopefully leads us into our next act.
Yeah. And before we go to the next act, I want to say I have a lot of conversations, and there's something that I started realizing that are what I call like anti-patterns of a DM. And I was just jotting them down so I don't forget it. And so some of them are, can I pick your brain? Yeah. I feel like that's the worst way to use that. Or saying, do you have 30 to 60 minutes? That's such a big buy. Right? Like nobody wants to do that. And matter of fact, I literally made somebody giggle the other day because I was like, hey, can we have a 6-minute conversation? They're like, what? 6 minutes? And I was like, yeah, let's just have a 6-minute conversation, like a real fast one. They're like, why not 5? Why not 15? I was like, because you've heard 5 and 15 before, but you haven't heard 6. No. And so they're like, okay, done. And they send the calendar invite for 15 instead. So that works. And then Or one thing that I've even played with recently has been, hey, let's have a conversation at 11:02. They're like, 11:02? I was like, well, you've heard of 11 before. I want to be a little different. And so there's that. Also, do never attach a resume on your first message. Don't ask, are there any roles? Because you're putting the burden on me to figure out if there are roles. Instead, you should be saying, hey, I saw this one specific role on this team. I know I can apply to it. La da da. Don't use generic praise. Like, I just love you. Like, no, put it towards something. Those are like some immediate things I find as like an anti-pattern in the earlier message. But also, you should be trying some variations to see what works best with your follow-up and what you're getting replies to. So if you send out 40 messages and you don't get any replies, there's something completely wrong. Like, there's just no way. Matter of fact, like, if you send 10 and you don't get a single reply, like, there's something probably wrong there at that point. Especially if you're doing it the right way. Like, you're warming them up, you're reaching out, etc.
Yeah, I have some speedrun videos on my YouTube where I just take 2 hours, 3-hour blocks of time, and I show you every message that I send. And the messages that get the best responses are these ones that break the mold. Like, I love the 11:02. I love the 6-minute conversation where they're a little silly but still professional. Those are the ones that always work, because you need to interrupt the person's thought pattern, right? If they're just scanning their LinkedIn message, they're just kind of a robot. But then when they see the 11:02, it breaks the robot brain and actually makes them want to take an extra second to respond. And so don't be afraid to be a little silly. Don't be afraid to put a little extra spin on it based off of what you see from their profile. That's going to break their pattern and make them have the time to respond.
Yeah. So checklist before the next segment, it's basically, what is your company hit list, and are you trying to find people within there that you could reach out to? So if you're looking at some pharmacy around you, or you're looking at a tech company, who are the people that you know or could potentially know or make an introduction to that can lead to those conversations? What are you doing that's conversationally valuable to help you in those conversations? Because you can't walk in like it's an accident. So the most common thing that I always hear is, oh, I don't have anything to talk about within this realm. It's like, well, then make it. Go do it. Go be part of it. And the other thing is warming up your quote unquote leads by going to the meetups, talking about the stuff, reaching out. I just literally had a director reach out to me, not because we've met before, but because he saw how I was helping someone and they tagged me in it. So like, that's another way to kind of get some of those stuff there. So do those things, which brings us into act number 2, your bottlenecks. One of the best effective ways to beat a bottleneck is honestly just taking daily and weekly audits of, here's what I did, here's what I saw successful, and then seeing what those next steps are, right? So the next steps could be having another follow-up conversation, because the first time you talk to somebody isn't going to normally be the time where they refer something to you. But if you've built out that relationship, it's over with at that point, right? And so pipelines, in my opinion, often die at very predictable checkpoints. So you should be removing those bottlenecks, or you should be moving those checkpoints around, or taking enough information to then realize we can move it somewhere else. And so one bottleneck or I can tell you the several bottlenecks that I'm thinking of, then we can go at them one by one. One bottleneck is the resume path to the recruiter, internal or third party. The other one is the phone screen to the behavioral interview, or the phone screen and the behavioral are one, which then goes to the technical, the take home, or something like that. The hiring recruiter to the technical manager. Like, these are areas where I could potentially see bottlenecks. And so what are you doing in your pipeline to kind of fix that? So fix number 1 for the resume to the recruiter part. It's like, your resume is fit for the one role that you're going for. It's top loaded with actual value outcomes. So whether that's business outcome, whether that's programming outcome, whether it's some definitive outcomes need to be there. And I've said this before, and what's funny is the call yesterday, the person even said it back to me, but they did it. And that has been, hey, don't put on your resume normal things people can associate with that role. But they literally did it, even though they said it to me. And I'm like, so you know the quote enough to repeat it, but you still applied it. So what I mean by that is this individual, and I'm trying to remember like some of the bullet points, but one of the points were they had built something that helped automate things, right? And it said automated things would streamline and reduce time on information handling and providing from one department to another. And I was like, what the hell does that even mean? What did you automate? I still don't understand what you automated. I don't understand what the impact was. I know a developer is going to write a script to automate something. Why is this significant for you to write on there? And then he was like, well, it's significant because if a company needs someone to automate something, I could do it. I was like, but what is that? What did you just show? I don't know what you automated to a certain degree. And as he's telling me, I'm like, what you just said is 30 times more valuable than the bullet point. Why didn't you write that? And then he's like, oh. So read your bullet points as if you are a recruiter that doesn't know any context of your job. And then ask yourself this question: what did they just learn about you, or what you're hoping that they learn about you? And second, what questions are you hoping that they make based on the information that you provided? I hate saying that on the podcast because I know people are going to steal that one. They're totally going to steal it.
That was Gem City for sure. That has to be on the Programming Podcast Premium. Yeah, that's the biggest actual bit of advice that I think you could give to someone when they're planning out their resume. And it's something that I've stolen from you. And I know the other people that listen to the podcast, I hope they do too. Because it's about putting yourself in the recruiter's shoes. What are they getting out of this? What can they use to argue in your favor, right? I see a recruiter as someone who gets money if they can find the right person for the opportunity, but doesn't want to get in trouble by recommending too many people, right? And so you want to find this line of showing to a recruiter why you are not the risk, why you are not the one that's going to waste people's time. And they need to be able to look through your stuff very, very quickly and know what value you instantly apply to the org that you're applying to, what value you instantly bring to the conversation they're about to have about you to the next phase of the program. And if your resume, your online presence doesn't scream that value proposition for them that they can then hand off to someone else, you really have to rethink what you're putting on these things. And all the other advice that we always talk about too, right? People reading in an F-shaped pattern, and you can be able to see software engineer so that they know that they're not taking a gamble on you. No one wants entry-level talent. No one wants junior. Nobody wants aspiring. If they have entry roles, that's fine. But you still want to present yourself as a professional, as someone with experience that can solve the problems that this org has and won't make a fool of themselves when you go to the next round and you're no longer talking to the recruiter but the nerds. And so all of that needs to be communicated in your first bullet point. And if it's not, they're just going to skip you and keep moving. And so going back to the beginning of the episode where we said you could have the same talent, the same experience, this is that piece. If you're not communicating it in a way that's easy to digest by the recruiter, and it's something that they can then repeat to someone else on their team, you've missed that step. And the person that has maybe even less experience than you, but can package it in a way that makes sense is going to win out every single time. One of the big mistakes I see when we're looking at this is people put too much technical bits in here, right? Mm-hmm. Where they're like the Flim Flam 5000 connected to the Jargon 55. And a recruiter who's non-technical can't turn to their peer and be like, hey, I got a candidate that Flim Flam 95 and hit the Jargon 16. Like that's a conversation they're never going to have. And so you just got to take everything about this process that we've been talking about so far is just put yourself in their shoes. Read your bullet point to your mama. Seriously, go read that first bullet point to your mama and see if your mama's like, oh, that's impressive. I could see the value you bring. If they don't, if they look at you like you're an alien, then guess what? You got to fix that bullet point.
Damn, that's good advice, actually. I've never thought about that. Like, go tell it to somebody who's completely non-technical.
Yeah.
And your mom is conditioned to love you. So if she doesn't know it...
If even she's like, no, then you know you got a problem. You got to fix them.
Okay, bottleneck number 2 of phone screen to behavioral, right? Like, we're not going to dive into deep. We have an episode that literally covers this in detail. But STAR or CAR, which I've been referencing recently, so situation, task, action, result, or in Leon's case, what is it? Cause action, result?
Yeah.
Cause, action,
it's just
result.
A little bit easier to memorize.
Yeah, I agree. You need to be using that. And so check out one of our last episodes on this. What was the episode? We literally just recorded it recently and put it out. It's very recent. Did we cover it in the 6,000 application one? Or why you're not winning job interviews, I think is the one that we did. Yeah. Why you're not winning job interviews. So that would be like an easy one to kind of throw that in there. But you need to be auditing that right there. And so if you're getting phone screens and it's not translating anywhere or if the phone screen is behavioral and you're not seeing yourself go to the next round, that has nothing to do with your technical abilities at the point. It has everything to do with everything else. So it's not like I need to learn more code. It's like maybe it has something to do with you're not answering the questions correctly because she wouldn't know or he wouldn't know or they wouldn't know the difference between you writing React and Angular. They would just know what you tell them at that point. So it's definitely a conversational disconnect versus technical in most cases. I won't say all. I don't like blanket statements, but definitely a majority for sure. So I wouldn't be too bogged down there. Any thoughts there before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, I know every recruiter is just jumping at the bit to tell their hiring manager that you produced a 30% uptime result. Like, it's just. I hope we're never, and this is something I always want to put out there. We're never mocking you. Like this to be very, very clear. It's just the things that we see, and they're funny because once you can see it. Like once you can see it, you go, I see it. Like, and that's what we're trying to shake you enough right now that hopefully you can see why it's a little silly too. Right. And once you can see it, the whole world opens up to you. Yeah.
You know, the beginning of any of the calls that I ever do, I always say the exact same thing. Hey, anything I say is not met with malicious intent. It's met with, we need to expose this so it's so obvious that we can finally get you from A to B. I don't need to build you up with fake confidence so you feel great and then maybe miss the point. It's like you'll be beyond confident and happy at point B that you won't need my fake words to get you there. And when you finally get paid and you get all these successes, you'll see it. And you know how many times in a call, including yesterday, going back to yesterday, where he was like, wow, when you say it like that, it's so obvious. When you point it out, it's so obvious. And then they start realizing, dang, how have I been doing this for so long? And these are not people that don't know how the world works. Like, they're highly educated, master's degree holder. Like, they were, and matter of fact, this person was going for a PhD. Very, very intelligent individuals. So it's not that they don't know what to do. They just need to be pinpointed the right way. And then once they realize it, like why wouldn't I know that? Okay, next bottleneck is the recruiter to the technical manager, right? Like, that's a bottleneck. That's a checkpoint that you know is going to exist. So what are you doing to help there? Turn your interviews that are interrogations into conversations. If you can't do or answer, tell me about yourself in such a profound, information-heavy way, you're not ready, in my opinion. If you don't understand how to leverage the power of, like, tell me about yourself, you're literally losing opportunities simply because of that. You need to be thinking through that. You need to be even scenario planning. You need to have like 5 talking points because interviews are nerve-wracking even for the most experienced of individuals, right? So if it's nerve-wracking, you should have 4 or 5 conversational points that you know, like, these are going to impress anybody I bring them to, right? So it's like, how do I navigate the conversation there when I feel like I'm losing footing in the conversation? That's a great way to beat that bottleneck and that checkpoint and progress forward.
Yeah. The narrative is probably the first thing you should spend a lot of time on. The why are you showing up today? Why is it worthwhile for someone to talk to you? And blending any of your past experience into why you're showing up as a software engineer today. It doesn't matter what you were doing. It doesn't matter what your previous career was. It doesn't matter. It's just, how can I take that and package it in a way that makes sense to a recruiter, that makes sense to a hiring manager? And if you can't do that piece, the door will consistently close because they're just talking to so many candidates that can articulate the value add of having them on the team, and they can't extend some extra grace there. You have to figure that out. And so once you do figure it out, it has a really good return because then it filters into your resume, it filters into your LinkedIn, it filters into the conversations. you can hear that my dog is very into this talking point, and so we're going to make sure that we go and listen to their narrative. But once you can figure that piece out, sometimes I think we say this stuff and people are just like, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things that you must do. This just filters out through every part of this process, that it should be a stop the presses, don't click apply again until you figure out your narrative in a way that makes sense, that record yourself talking through it. Talk to somebody else through it. Make sure it makes sense to somebody other than yourself inside your brain. Because if you don't get this piece right, everything else, it's the domino that falls everything, you know?
Yeah, I know for a fact that even I sometimes feel like, dude, there's some points that we keep saying over and over, but it's like we get asked the same questions on over and over, and that's why it sticks out to me. It's like we're literally being asked this on a regular basis. That's the reason why, unfortunately. So now, act number 3, the one metric that you should be looking for, and I'm going to turn this into a mathematical equation for y'all, so that way you could see it. And I know you're like, I became a dev because I don't want to do math. Yeah. And it should be meaningful conversations per week, or MC divided by W. And the way that I'm looking at it is, what qualifies as a meaningful conversation? Is it a great DM conversation back and forth? Is it a coffee chat that you were able to get? Is it an interview that you were able to get? Is it you talking with other people? Maybe you made new friends in the field of tech that you didn't have previously, and that's equating to like a meaningful conversation. But there's only so many times you can talk to the exact same person over and over and over again, where you know, like, oh, this is never going to lead to anything, where you start removing them from that equation. I'm not saying remove them from your life or anything, but remove them from the MC divided by W, and then start realizing, where should I be spending some of that time or dedicating to it? And even at like the consulting level, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately too. Like, what is my MC divided by W equating to for like us growing our business, getting more projects? Am I talking to the right stakeholders? I'm constantly auditing what that looks like. And I think you should be too, because I'll tell you this, the more meaningful conversations you have, it only increases the likelihood of luck hitting your side, right? I've never seen someone hit a jackpot not buying a lottery ticket or going to the casino, right? You're not going to hit it just sitting on the couch having a regular day. There has to be some activity that leads you in that direction for that quote unquote jackpot to hit you, right? So this is going to be that activity that leads to that jackpot. And so meaningful activity will lead somewhere. But then the more people that you have in that realm, they're advocating for you in those rooms. And so that needs to kind of be what you're thinking about. And so momentum that you start building through this, the momentum is going to beat over investing in a single line, lead, or opportunity. And so what does that theoretically look like for you? And so I don't want you to lose any real opportunities because of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. Probably like top 5 questions I get on a weekly basis is, Leon, you're telling me I have to like build projects, do leak code, network, like what should I focus on? And I was like, well, a little bit of everything, but networking. And so I think maybe the networking term is a little too nebulous. And so I love the meaningful conversations per week. That's the thing that's gonna take your process to the next level. Because going back to the inputs, that's directly putting inputs into the funnel. It's directly putting inputs into your process. But it's getting at the core of what's gonna make you actually have a shot at getting a job for most folks. Like the clicking apply, you can get lucky. But we're not here to talk about luck. We're here to talk about a process. And those meaningful conversations per week is something that's in your control. Everyone can figure out how to have meaningful conversations. And if you're listening to this, you don't know how to do that, you got to listen to some of our other podcast episodes where we talk about how to get those conversations going. But that's something that's squarely in your control. You can send more messages. You can go to more places. You can contribute to more communities. That's something that you can put a goal on the wall and hit it every single day. And the more that you can take that into the control of your process, that you don't have to worry about the end result because it's going to lead to burnout, but you can say, you know what, today I'm going to have a meaningful conversation. The folks that do that, the folks that make that almost their North Star, they get jobs. because it's just about finding eventually the right person at the right time, and it snowballs. Once you're having good conversations, all the other conversations become easier. People want to refer you, they want to connect you with the other person, and you can kind of keep those things going. And so I think at first it's kind of daunting for folks, but once you get 10 underneath your belt, you're like, oh, I can do this. People do want to talk to me. And then you can start being a little bit more suave and be like, who else should I talk to? And then it kind of just picks up momentum. So if you haven't put in the activation energy to do that yet, that's okay. Just know that once you do, it can pay dividends for a very long time.
Yep. And honestly, I don't even want to add anything to that. I think that was good right there. Be very thoughtful about it, which now goes into act number 4, which I look at the playbook and audit, right? So let's kind of look at what this looks like. Number 1, I'm not going to dive into it. We covered this in a previous episode, but the Thrive framework. I'll recap what Thrive means, but if you want the details, you need to go check out that episode. We'll have it in the show notes if that helps for you to kind of go back to. But this is, in my opinion, the way that you will win any conversation or any interview. And but what I mean by win isn't necessarily always going to equal you're moving on to the next round. For me, a win is they now know all the relevant information to make an accurate determination of whether I'm a fit for the role or not. That's not always going to equal as a we're hiring you. That is going to equal you're moving to the next round, or actually we've realized you're not a fit, you're not moving to the next round. If I lose out on an opportunity simply because I'm not a fit, that's fantastic. If I lose out on an opportunity because they don't know I'm capable of doing that thing, and because of that, that's why I got thrown out, that's a big miss, and that's a big failure on everyone's part. And your part, my part, everyone's part. So that's why you use Thrive. So Thrive stands for targeted research, honest narratives, results focus, interactive engagement, validation of your alignment with the role, and E stands for elevated impact and extended dialogue. So you will go ahead and check out that episode in the show notes if you need to kind of check that one out. It was just a couple episodes ago, so you can just easily go back, but that one right there. And that's going to be the thing that helps you stop the interrogations and then turn them into conversations. And the audit itself, number 1, you should be tracking a lot of this effort. Put it in spreadsheets. You should be doing mock interviews with yourself. Ask some questions, like see what's being said there. But also I would be putting certain things in there to like say, hey, you know what? This isn't great. I don't like the way that I'm responding to this. The only way that you're going to actually say that is by actually trying to respond to those questions. Make up a fake interview in your head and just see how you go through it. Let me tell you something. Even to the best in the world, they're not going through every interview like there's no bumps in the roads. Yeah. They're handling objections, or they're trying to make it difficult to see how they would respond in real time.
You know what you put me on to that I think could be a big help for folks? GPT voice mode. I played D&D with ChatGPT voice mode 45 minutes on my ride home the other day.
Oh, wow.
Just going back and forth. They were being a dungeon master, and we were having full-blown conversations. They were leading me through it. I was like, wait a minute, like, I could do this for everything. And so if you want interview feedback, just use ChatGPT voice as an interviewer and have a real interview. And then at the end, ask it, what could I have done differently? What could have sounded better? What could have been made more impact? And boom, you're literally sitting there talking to what sounds like another human. You're getting the practice and you're getting exact real-time feedback on what you could do better. There's literally nothing that would be more impactful for you to do than that, like right now.
Dude, yes. I am a big fan of using AI voice modes for a couple of reasons. I on record saying this too. I don't really like validation from others as much as I do finding the validation within myself. But I love finding out what's wrong with something. So I will literally tell ChatGPT or whatever agent I'm using for that, sometimes Gemini, but I'll be like, tear this down. Why is this terrible? And then I'm going to look at it like these are reasonable things to say that are bad, or like there's no way in hell anybody in the world would even be thinking about this. Like it's way off base. But then I want to have well thought out responses to those things. Like let me think through it. And sometimes when we get in tunnel vision, everything is so happy-go-lucky that you can't see past that. It gives you well thought out edge cases and ideas to things. And especially on voice mode, as I'm talking, I can think of something and instantly say it, because if I'm typing it, sometimes I may think through the thought and just not send it. Voice mode has been really effective towards that. But also I've had it play roles. Like I'll tell them, you are an angry staff engineer that's being very critical on my code review. Tell me why this is not working properly, or tell me why the way that I'm approaching this architecture is incorrectly. Phenomenal at being that persona.
Yeah, it can role play so well. So have it role play being a recruiter, have it role play being an engineering manager, have it role play being someone at a meetup that you're afraid to talk to. You can do all of this stuff and practice, which is amazing. And yeah, the end of the day, it's about not just continuing to do the thing that you've been doing. It's how can I look at every message that I sent, every conversation I had, and just get a tiny percent better. Because if you can just get a tiny percent better, message to message, conversation to conversation, after a few months, you're crushing the game. And I think people really do kind of get stressed out about like having to make these huge changes. You don't have to do that. A small incremental improvement on each thing that you're doing over enough time span gives you huge return. And so I really hope that you've been taking some of the advice we've been giving today and put it into practice, and don't feel like you have to go 0 to 100. You can just incorporate these things day to day, and it'll slowly start to get to where you need to be.
100%. And I would even say some additional things here in regards to the audit now. When you're auditing, what are we really talking about? Number one, you need to audit what's actually working well and what isn't. So you could spreadsheet it, you could put it in a Google Doc, whatever it may be. But I would be auditing, number one, MC divided by W, right? Meaningful conversations per week. What are those starting to look like? What if you actually put in a spreadsheet, these are the companies around me that I'm targeting, like 25 companies. These are the people that I've been able to say, I am either connected with them, I've talked with them, I know them, put them in there. And then make that the homepage that you land on every single day, that when you open up your browser, to just say, hey, how far have I gotten towards this? Or write it physically. I'm very big in physical notes. And so on my wall behind my computer is like 20 notes right now. And it reminds me of my goals. And so I could write down the company and be like, these are the people. Have I done anything to reach this person today? Have I done anything here? That could be an easy win right there, because I'm facing it all the time. But then I would be taking notes of all the conversations, right? Like, this went well. This actually didn't land at all. And I should probably remove this from my normal levels of conversation. Or I finally landed in an interview, and like, I'm talking minutes after the interview, write down what went right, what went wrong. If you had a phone screen, what went right, what went wrong. Don't let your mind sugarcoat it for you after the fact, and you're like, oh, I did everything right. Like, I'm telling you, even the best don't do everything right. Like, there's points for improvement at all times. What did you do that was seen as valuable? What did you do that was seen as impactful? What did you do that was seen as a way to steer the conversation in the right way? Like, write those things down. Write down what you thought was a weak answer, or write down what was a question that you weren't prepared for, and then start auditing that process and seeing what happens. And then the other thing is, be very consistent with auditing. Do it on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, or don't go monthly. It's too far out. Like, you need to be more frequent with it.
I hope what people are listening to is that we're just not going into this process like an accident. We have some sort of system that we're following each and every day to like make sure we're hitting our goals. I always love the James Clear quote: you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the levels of your systems, right? And so if you do not have a system for this, your motivation is not going to carry you through this. Your discipline is probably not going to carry you through this. This is a lot of small incremental work. And so you need to be setting up your days and your weeks to be able to make this your default, right? Like, how do you, like, you have an interview, your default should be to, all right, let me digest my notes from that interview. What could I do better? You send a message and you don't get a response after a few days, you should be asking yourself, why didn't I get a response, right? You need to make this like a systematized process so that it's just your default, and unblocking all the things you need to unblock to make this your default. Because when you do, it's just a complete night and day difference. And the other thing I always like to just keep in people's minds is that there are people that are doing this. You're going up against Danny, who's doing this, right? You're going against a lot of the folks that'll listen to this episode. You know what? I've been stuck. I've been doing some effort, but I haven't been getting what I want out of it. Maybe it's time to put in a system. Maybe it's time to put in the audit. Maybe it's time to record, if you're able to do that in your state, my interview, so I can understand what am I what's the missing piece? Because there's always a missing piece. When we do these calls, when we do these things, there's always a missing piece. So when it comes to the audit, record yourself. Record yourself saying stuff. If you can in your state, record your side of the interview so you can play back and hear I got stuck on the narrative piece, right? Just make it something that your default is collecting this data, analyzing the data, and making that incremental change. If you can figure out to get there.
Yeah, I would say if you're going against me in an interview, you'll probably have a good chance of winning it if you're a better fit and you let them know that. But if it comes down to giving them enough information, I'm winning every single time because I go in there very tactfully. Whether that information is always accurate or not, no guarantee that they see my skill set better than yours if you're giving them enough information. And so just don't ever lose out on an opportunity simply because they didn't know. Or if you listen to podcasts in the past, I've said this on record. Like, I literally lost out on an opportunity at a gas station simply because I didn't say, I think I could do that. Mm-hmm. Don't let anyone realize that they don't know enough about you to determine whether you put your hand up or not. All right, y'all. It's time for everyone's favorite part of the podcast, including mine, the Ask Danny and Leon a Question. This one, 100% has to be from 100 Devs person because I don't know if we've ever talked about this on the podcast. Okay. And it is a very short question. And they commented on YouTube, hey, what's the deal with the chosen one and why haven't they landed a job yet?
I'm not talking about this. It came up during a huddle 2 weeks ago, and it was just it was just not the way to ask the question. And also, I think some people just don't realize that, like, this is real people and, like, real lives. And you got to be tactful when you ask those types of questions. And you're talking about someone who put their soul to bear out in front of a whole community so that you could learn. And this type of response makes it so that people don't do that. And so that was my first response to it is, don't be unkind. If you can't be kind, you don't belong in 100 Devs or any of the communities that I'm a part of. That's our only role. So the reason why I love the Chosen One series is because it shows what it really is like to get a job. You've been sold a lie that you can learn for 3 months, you could then get a job, and it's going to be easy street. That's never how it plays out. You're talking about doing something in what normally takes 4 to 5 years. If you can learn and get a job in less than 4 to 5 years, you're absolutely crushing the game. So we have someone who has not even really finished 100 Devs yet that is dealing with a lot of complex stuff in personal life and has been crushing it in terms of getting interviews every single week, making the incremental progress that they need to make their resume. We figured out what was wrong with the resume, figured out what was wrong with the LinkedIn, figured out what was wrong with their narrative and how they were portraying stuff, figured out how their project was not making it was making it past the recruiters, but not making it past the hiring manager. So literally everything we've talked about this episode, this person has walked through in real time, shown you each week how they're doing it, showed you how they're continuing getting interviews, getting connections, doing the game perfectly and bearing it to the world. And then we get some asshole that wants to come and be like, why am I getting a job? Like, no, you don't understand. It's not something that is, you do a few things, you press a button and it magically works. It's small incremental progress over a long enough run that helps you get an opportunity. It's not pandemic times where you sneeze and said the word JavaScript and you get a job. It's just not what it was before, and it's not what it is now. But if you keep putting shots on goal, you get the job. And it's been a couple of months. You got to give them a little bit of time. They had some interviews last week. They're going to continue to keep having interviews next week, and they're building up to it. And so I think if you're listening to this, you got to realize that it's not a straight path. And everyone has things that they're working through. And that's why we brought it even during this episode where, like, hey, we're giving you this advice. I have no idea what you're dealing with personally. I have no idea what your life is set up to do this, but here are the things that we see work. And if you do enough of this over a long enough period of time, you get the job. That's the promise we make to you. Not that you press a button and you get a job in a week. Like, that's not the dream I'm selling. I'm selling a 4 to 5 year career dream. And if you can do it in less than that, you've won. You hit the lottery.
There's actually something that you didn't touch on that I think is a very, very big deal. When it comes to the chosen one, I'll avoid saying names because it's public, but like if you're in 100 devs, you know, and if you're not in 100 devs, let me explain this a little bit. The idea of the chosen one was someone will be showcasing themselves on a weekly basis on the activity that they're doing until they finally land a job so people can learn from it. So if you're confused by that, that is a big distinction right there. It's a phenomenal idea, in my opinion. And the interesting thing is, I've known this chosen one for a while. I believe Leon has as well. One thing that I pointed out to them previously, because we jumped on a call before they became the chosen one, was, hey, you're probably one of the most active people that I've seen trying to get an opportunity. But it has translated into zero things. Like, you've gotten opportunities for things that have nothing to do with your field of expertise or where you're trying to go, but it's in adjacent areas. I don't think you're presenting yourself in conversations in the right way. Like, do you feel that way? And they said no. And then as we talked more, and I role played with them of, let's assume I'm at a meetup and we're having a cold conversation. How does that go? And it didn't go favorably, right? There was a very big disconnect on how they were showcasing their skills, how they were getting people in conversations, how they're getting job opportunities. They weren't getting any of that. They didn't really have a plan. To now being in a situation in a couple months to going from no one really responding to them in a meaningful way to now getting not just interviews, but having conversations that actually lead in the right direction, that is without a doubt, and this is not any bias, this is just me as a software developer that helps me get jobs. Knowing Leon has nothing to do with this response or evaluation here, but having someone truly have conversations that actually mean something or lead to something, or it now finally has people finally saying, you know what, I need to refer you in for this. It wasn't happening before. They heard the advice. They went through the cohort program. They went to 100 days. They went through all these technical things. They literally have the technical skill. They know what they're doing, right? I can actually vouch for this individual saying, I know they can do what they're doing. But they had no clue how to actually have a meaningful conversation that leads to something. They were approaching it the incorrect way. Now it's all translating into meaningful things. How could you not look at that and be, number one, impressed? But number two, how could you not look at that and then realize this is a massive success for the timeline? I think people think this person likes me, I get hired today. No. But to be honest, in my opinion, this individual is significantly higher along the path than I thought they would be at this point anyway. And so, number one, I love the fact that you're doing it publicly. Number two, I think this is like finally setting in ideas of how much time and effort it takes to translate something in an effective way. But it shows how much time and effort this individual has been placing on a daily, weekly basis to improving the communication skills, to improving the packaging and gift wrapping skills of their skills for someone to finally take a vested interest. Just because you know how to code, that's not opening a door. But the way that you describe it, the way that you talk about it, the way that you pique interest, that does. And that's always been the case, but now it's more so than ever before. Like, having technical skill is one thing, being able to talk about it is a completely different one. And I've said, and I've been on record, technical skills and skills to get a job are not the same thing, and they run parallel. They never intersect. So you need to learn that separate set of skills along with the technical if you're going to make something happen. And so I actually think they're making really rock solid progress. And if you don't realize that, you're going to have a really rude awakening trying to make an opportunity happen for yourself.
Yeah, I think this episode is really exactly what they went through. You could be doing the motions, but not getting the results that you want. And so hopefully if you paid attention to this episode, you can start making a lot of the changes that they made in their journey and start getting the same type of returns. Interviews that go somewhere, conversations that lead to something, and That's what we want for you. And so hopefully you got a lot of value out of this episode.
It's been real. It's been fun. And we will see you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.